Welcome, everyone. We're going to take a journey today and what I've called on the trail of the Bogomils. That's not just the Bogomils, but in the territory where we visited here in the last 3 weeks, they had a prominent presence in history. And it's like what happened in many other areas and times in history past. There was a dark period of time, and out of that, there was a deliverance. And great light would come to view among God's people. Now, the first dark age was that 9th plague in Exodus. Remember, in the land of Egypt, the very last, next to the last plague, the 10th plague was the Passover, and that was death of the firstborn. If you didn't have the blood on the pillar over the posts, and you were inside and you had followed all the instructions and believed in the Lamb that was going to die for you, your salvation. Well, in the land of Egypt, in Exodus chapter 10, talks about this darkness that came upon the land. It said it was there, even darkness which could be felt. Have you ever felt? Even so dark you'd feel it? Couldn't see a thing. Thick darkness in the land for 3 days. They couldn't see one another. They didn't get up out of their place. They were afraid to bump into something or someone. Yeah, I know. I don't hear anything. There it is. Okay. So that was one of the first dark ages. Now what happened? You see, the light was where God's people were. They had light. Okay, are we not working? Get it? Yeah, okay. Isaiah 60. So now there's another darkness. When was this period of darkness came? Isaiah 60. Behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people. When was that? Right before Jesus came. Because the very first verse of that says, there we go. The very first verse says, arise, shine, for thy light has come. And Jesus said he was the light of the world, right? So the light came when there was darkness. What's the third time we're going to have, that was redemption after darkness. Revelation 16:10. There's going to be another time of darkness right before Jesus comes. This is one of the plagues, the plague of darkness. Poured out the vial, and on his kingdom it was full of darkness. Now, when there's great darkness, somewhere there's light. And that's what we want to follow today. This was the period of time called the Dark Ages. Went from 538 to 1798, 1,260 years, called the Dark Ages. 42 months, 3.5 times. You know all that in prophecy. Well, the little horn came up. Remember the prophecy of the little horn, Daniel chapter 7? And it uprooted 3 horns when it came up. And these were the Heruli and the Visigoths and the Carthaginians, the Vandals, which were in Carthage, also called the Carthaginians, and the Ostrogoths, or the Eastern Goths. So you had the Western Goths and the Eastern Goths. The Visigoths, or the Eastern Goths, were in Spain. Ostrogoths were over in Italy. So were the Heruli, and they actually displaced them. And the Vandals were in North Africa, just below Italy, down in the bottom part of the Mediterranean. Well, when the little horn was beginning power, so he got rid of all these 3, why did he attack these 3 horns? They wouldn't agree with what the little horn power wanted to pursue and enforce on everybody. What was that? What was the little horn's power's agenda? Sunday, yeah? Easter instead of Passover. Trinity, that was one of the things. They had a whole bunch of other festivals that they substituted for all the other feasts. They had prayer to the saints, infant baptism, worship Mary, a lot of things that they did. Okay. And these were Christian countries. These were Christian nations that rejected this because they had been evangelized. They had been converted to Christianity by those who had originally believed what the Bible said. Okay, we'll move on. There's a whole, we could study that extensively. This is one of the first places they went, from Antioch. Remember in Antioch, you read in the book of Acts of the Apostles, it says they were first called Christians in Antioch. And then they spread from there. When there was persecution in that area, they started to scatter. They spread. And one of the places they went, Turkey, was Asia Minor back then. This is where all the churches that Paul established, Laodicea and Corinth and Ephesus and Philippi and Thessalonica, all those cities that Paul went to in his missionary journeys, he established churches. Well, that was all across Turkey, all around in Turkey. What is today Turkey? And in the eastern area, where Mount Ararat, let's see, where's Mount Ararat? Right there. Right on the border with that and Iran, what today is parts of Russia, I think it gets down into there, Armenia, was Armenia. And so this, they're a kind of shaded area. That's Armenia. So a lot of them went there, the Christians did, and they were later identified as believers of Paul. Now, there's some controversy as to whether this was Paul the Apostle Paul, or whether it was Paul of Samosata, who also taught a more primitive type of Christianity rather than what the little horn power was teaching. A book that was found in the 1700s in Armenia, preserved in one of the old churches there. Frederick Conover heard about this. He went to Armenia, hand-copied all the Armenian texts. He could read, evidently, Armenian, and he translated this book, and you can download it from Google Books. I downloaded it, and they've got all the Armenian in there, and the translation, and his commentary, called The Key of Truth. And so it's one of the only preserved documents that tell us what these people believed back then, because everything that had ever been written about all of these groups, the Waldenses, the Albigenses, the Cathars, all of these different groups, even in the Bogomils, it's been lost. They destroyed them all. They burned them, everything they had. They didn't want anybody to know what they believed. They only wanted to promote what they taught. So it's very fortunate that this one book is preserved. And in this book, it mentions some very interesting things. They migrated in there around 600 AD. And around 800 AD is when they think the dating of this Armenian script, because of its very archaic nature. It's sort of like reading King James Bible. You know, that's not the way we speak today. And so you say, well, it sounds a lot like Shakespearean type time. So you can date where it was. And that's how he dated. They think that this book, The Key of Truth, was about 800 AD. Simple church order, no hierarchy. What did Jesus say? You have one Father, and all ye are brethren. One Master. Infant baptism repudiated, no idea of original sin. Proper time for baptism is the age of 30. Adult baptism, which should be done in a river. Oh, that was interesting. He calls it the Eucharist, but it's communion. Should be taken at night. And they had an agape meal. They didn't believe in the worship of Mary or Mariolatry. Intercession of the saints was rejected. Image worship, crosses, relics, candles, all of that. Purgatory, they didn't believe in that. He says Easter, but Easter is never on the 14th of Nisan. That's always Passover. Easter's always on a Sunday, right? And that's what the Little Horn Power really wanted to try and enforce, and they did that. At the same time, they had the Nicene Council of Nicaea in 325. The other thing they had on that, besides a creed, was Easter had to be on Sunday, always on Sunday. But they never had any Sunday observances. In this book, The Key of Truth, the Armenian Christians recorded their practices. Saturday Sabbath was maintained. There was no Feast of Christmas or Annunciation. These are all Catholic festivals. The word Trinity never appears in the document. So there was a lot of things that we can identify with these people. That's what the Bible says, right? And that's what they believed. They spread from here, out of Armenia, into what back in the Middle Ages, in the Dark Ages, was called Thrace. Today it's what we would identify as Bulgaria. And from there, and the original people over in Turkey, in the Armenia, they were called Paulicians. I used to pronounce this Paulician. And when we got over there to Serbia, they said, no, it's Paulician. I said, oh, okay. So, and they spell it with a K. I need to change that. I guess they helped me remember it. And from there, as you can see, it went into Serbia, to Romania, and parts north, up the Balkan lands. And so in Bulgaria is where the Paulicians then became, they influenced, in fact, oh, I got to read this to you. I just found this out this week. After I got back, I was looking more information on this. And it says the Paulicians were branded as Jews, Muslims, Arians, and Manichaeans. They called them every name they could. And it says, it's likely that their opponents employed these appellations merely as a term of abuse, not that they were that way. And isn't that what happens? You keep the Sabbath, you're a Jew. You don't eat pork, you're a Muslim. Yeah, because they don't either. So they would get called all these things. Let's see. He says in the Key of Truth, actually he mentions in there that large bodies of the Paulicians were transported to Thrace, Bulgaria, in the 8th and again in the 10th century. The first immigration was 746 under the order of Constantine V. He was the one of the descendants of the original Constantine, and he was emperor at that time of the Byzantine. That's the Eastern Roman Empire from 741 to 775. Well, he wanted to spread. He was actually a Paulician, apparently because he was against icons, and he what they called the iconoclasts. You ever heard of the iconoclasts, iconoclastic people? And they would go into the monasteries and the churches, and they'd have these icons, and they would tear them down, take them out of there, and get rid of them. They didn't want them worshiping images. And so, and the Paulicians, as you saw there, they were against that. He maintains that, Constantine was most likely a member of the Paulician church. And then again in 970 A.D., the Armenian emperor, John Tsimikes, deported 200,000 Armenians who believed this way to the Danube area. Well, that's same place, Balkans. The Danube runs through there. And missionaries, and they were converting the Bulgarian nation to their religion for over 100 years. And so that's where the Bogomils, it's two words. If anyone knows Bog in Russian and Serbian and the Slavic languages, that means God. Bog is God. Bogoslav. God bless you. And so Bogomils, meal is dear, our friend. So these were friends of God, or dear to God. That's what the name meant. It's very similar. The Greek counterpart to that is in the very first verse of the Gospel of Luke. If you turn to Luke chapter 1, verse 1, Luke is addressing this. He says, Dear Theophilus. Remember that? You've heard that name? Luke was writing to Theophilus. Theo, what's Theos? God. Philos. Philo, lover of God. A friend of God, dear to God. It means the same thing. And so the Bogomils were Theophilin, and they were Theophilus. He also mentions in there that in present-day Serbia, there are still remnants of people who identify themselves with the Paulicians who were transported into this area in Pančevo and Bela Blato. Now, Pančevo, I'll get a little bigger map here. Pančevo is over here. It's near Belgrade. And we flew into Belgrade, but it was in the middle of the night. Now, it was going to be in the early afternoon. But when we went through Zurich, they went through Carolyn's suitcase 3 times through the X-ray machine, trying to find what she had hidden, I guess. I don't know. It sure took a long time. We missed our flight. And the next flight wasn't for 6 hours later. And then it was to Frankfurt. And then we had to wait another couple hours up there for a flight. And we finally got to Belgrade at midnight. And it took 2 hours to drive all the way up A1 up to Zrenjanin. And Zrenjanin is where Borislav is. And that's where we had our meeting. So we came in the middle of the night. Well, we weren't going to go all the way back down there to go to Pančevo. I would have liked to. They said this, maybe but it's kind of an industrial area nowadays. You know, after 1,000 years, things change. But while we were up in Zrenjanin, there was this Bela Blato, which it's just outside the town. It wasn't very far at all. And so we drove over there. And here we are in Zrenjanin. It's got these very typical European-type buildings. And you got the new, and you got the old, and nice river that goes through there, but they said it's not real clean. It's a nice reflection here, but it's kind of polluted these days. Had some swans swimming out there. That's the typical construction in the city streets there. People have big sidewalks where the people park up on the side. There's Boris, and we got there, and they live in an apartment building. And unfortunately, there's a lot of graffiti all over everything. Unemployment high, young people out of school, no jobs, nothing to do. They're restless. They're discouraged, and they express themselves with spray paint. The economy for spray paint is doing very well, and they're selling a lot of that. But we really enjoyed our time there. There's Sarah, and that's Boris and Caroline, or Carol. She just went by Carol. Their daughter, and they have a new baby boy, Daniel. I don't know if I got a picture of him. We were getting ready to go to the meetings. This is where we stayed, a little hostel, I guess, kind of like a motel type thing, but it's a communal breakfast area. And Villa Philadelphia, if you can see the name on there, Philadelphia. It was very nice. Those doors are tall. It must be 15 feet tall doors. That thick, you got to push on them to get them open. And here's the group that stayed there at Philadelphia. And Natasha on the right side end here, she was our translator. And all these, we had people, the guys down on the other end down there are from Croatia. And where was the other place up there? Macedonia. Yeah, Macedonia. Yeah, I had a lot of people. And this is the little hall that they rented where we had our meetings. And had a pretty good, nice turnout. There's Natasha's translating for us. Oh, I was drawing the map here. We didn't have a projector, so we had used the whiteboard. And there's Zvanko on the far left there, sitting closest to the camera with his arms crossed. He was our taxi cab driver. Drove us in the middle of the night up to Zrenjanin. And there's Boris with several packages of books. While we were there, we were anxious, hoping they would get these books that he had ordered to get printed, would get there in time. And so just before Sabbath, the truck came and made the delivery, and we brought them in there and put them out on the table so all the people could get the books. But he's doing a great work. Down in the basement of the apartment building he's at, he rents a little storage area, and it's filled with these books that he's been getting printed, and then he sends them out, and they're going all over Serbia, into Romania. He's got some Romanian stuff too. This is the Orthodox church there in town, and pretty ornate, kind of dark inside, but they have icons. Here's the icons that we were talking about. And the glass on these pictures, it's all smudged from people kissing the glass. A lot of people have recognized that. This is out in Beloblato. We drove out to this area looking for evidence of the Paulicians that might have been here a long time ago. Well, I'm not sure that you could say this is Paulician, but it's the oldest buildings in the area. And it's about 1,000 years old, they said. So stuff that goes down, they had root cellar goes down there, and a well, and this the thing over there, it's got a arm on it, and it goes down into the well, and you pull on the counter lever and get water out of the well. And then we went to the graveyard in town and hoped that we might find some old gravestones. But these gravestones are not even 100 years old, and they're already deteriorated so much you can't even read what's on them. So 1,000 years? I don't think there's any chance at all you'd be able to find anything. So after our time there in Serbia, it was time to go to Romania. And we told them we needed a van. Well, it's a small van, and we had about 12 pieces of luggage. Two of them, the two stacked on top of each other that got writing on it there, are filled with books that were printed in German. These are German translations that we needed to take to Germany. We got them printed down here in Serbia because it was cheaper. That's the place to get printing done. Very, very nice, too. The covers are nice and shiny, a little shinier than ours. And we got to get 6 people in there, too. So you can see the suitcase there in front of that seat, and that's Carolyn's seat. And she had to straddle the suitcase. So then we drove out of Zrenjanin up over to the border of Romania. That was an interesting experience. They didn't go through all of our suitcases and everything, but they sure took a long time at the border. And we decided they were waiting to see if we were going to panic and get excited or start biting our nails and yeah. But we didn't. We got food out and we ate, and I had my computer and it was charged, and we just sat there for a while until they finally got tired of us not getting excited, and they let us through. And then we went on. I drove all the way over into Deva, and north up to Armenia, and that's where Deon is. And so out into the country and up cobblestone roads, kind of bumpy, up into the hills, and you see all kinds of little nice, colorful things, churches and carts and haystacks, and finally we got to their place. Now, they don't have a road up to the house. You remember. About 200 meters, we got to haul all this luggage up to the house. I'm persuading Deon to really consider, we're going to try to help him out with whatever it takes to get the city said that they would do it if they would just pay for the fuel. They'll even provide the gravel. I said, you can't pass that up. Well, yeah, let's do it. Get a road up there. So we're going to work on that this summer, because now's the time to do it, when the weather's good. And then we had to haul all this stuff up the hill. Yeah. Grim determination on my face. And here's the house that they have up there, and they fixed it up. I think even since, you may have seen it last year. It's painted all inside. It's very nice. We got all our luggage loaded, and then we made friends with this facility nearby. Got real acquainted with that little structure. They did. They have a nice bath and a wood-fired hot water heater. I had never seen one of those before, but it works. It worked good, and when you had water. But after about 3 days, we ran out of water, so we had to use this. And here's in the area there where his desk is. Oh, Carolyn's headdress was a real hit. All the ladies said, "We want one." So they brought their scarves out, and Carolyn did them all up. Same pattern. They like that. And they said, "Now we all look like gypsies." And we climbed up to the top of the hill. Beautiful. I'm telling you, this time of the year that we were over there was just spectacular. The weather was perfect. Everything was in bloom. It was green, green, green. Hills, mountains. Oh, man, what a place. The location is great. They need a road. And so we're going to get a road up there. And here's where we outdoor, because the weather was nice. We don't have meetings outdoors, so we're getting set up for that. Dion was sleeping in the tent. I guess he and David, yeah. David Jonathan. And here we are, Sabbath, out under the trees there. And indoors, when we were indoors, we had the group inside, and everyone's singing here. And Carolyn's playing on a little keyboard. And our visitors, she played the guitar, too. It's very nice. There's the whole group lined up there before everybody took off. Actually, we had more people than this, but they would come and go. And one day we had some family come, and then they would leave, and another one come the next day. And if we had everybody there all at once, we'd had a real good crowd. And this is just before we left. Then we went over. This is this Monday? No, Sunday. This is Sunday. Went over to one of the other people that attended there. They have a house that's got a nice creek where we could have a baptism. And so 3 people were going to come over here to get baptized. And just before the baptism, his son-in-law and daughter, they're building this house up behind their house. And he says, "You want to see my telescope?" He says, "It's the biggest telescope in Romania." I says, "Ah, come on. Really?" "Yeah, look at the size of this thing. It's a big reflector." And he just got, the day we were going out, he was driving us to the airport, and we saw the delivery truck coming in, and put the brakes on, he goes out and he gets his package. It was the eyepiece for this thing. And here's the creek where we had the baptisms. They've got their pump on the edge there. That's what that black box is. But they dammed it up, put some plastic down in there to get the water level up high enough. And even then, you had to get down on your knees and to get under the water. So here that was, what's his name? Ovidio getting baptized. And his wife also, here's the choir is singing while they're getting baptized. And even Dion got baptized. He said he'd never been baptized in the name of Jesus. He wanted to get baptized in the name of Jesus. So I said, okay, so he got baptized. And even I hadn't had a bath. Remember, we ran out of water. We ran out of water. I hadn't had a bath in 3 days. And they said, "Do you want to get a bath while you're here?" "Yeah, I got one." Okay. So now back to history. Here's where we're at. Remember the Paulicians, they went into Bulgaria. They influenced the Bogomils. The Bogomils adopted everything that the Paulicians believed, and they spread up the Balkans, Bosnia. You've heard of Bosnia, Herzegovina, and Croatia, up into Germany. Well, that's where we're going next. Okay, so we've been to Serbia, we've been to Bulgaria, Romania, and now we're going to... Now, up in Germany, the history there of these people are known as, they believe much the same things, are known as the Anabaptists. You've heard of the Mennonites. They came out, they're all very closely related, Mennonites. This was actually published in 1897, but the Confession of Faith was written by Menno Simons. 1837. And it was written by Menno Simons in 1563. I think that's what it was. Well, we'll see it on the next slide. But notice what they believed here. Of the eternal birth and Godhead of the only begotten Son of God, we believe that the Son of God from all eternity came forth, was born, and in an ineffable manner, it means an inexplainable manner, proceeded forth from the true God, his Father. Now, what verse are we talking about? He's quoting Bible. This is alluding to Bible verses, right? John 8, verse 42. Jesus said, I proceeded forth and came from God. Of the same nature, essence and substance with the Almighty God, a light from the true light, true God from the true God, who being in the form of God, that's Philippians 2, verse 6, and the brightness of his glory, Hebrews 1, 3, and the express image of his person. They're stringing together Bible texts. As the stone which was cut out of the mountain without hands, that's Daniel 2, verse 45, and became a great mountain, filled the whole earth, is of the same substance with the mountain from which it was taken, so also is the elect precious cornerstone, Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God, the same in his being and substance, co-equal, co-eternal with the Almighty Father, who is the mountain and rock of ages. Now you might say, well, co-equal, yeah, in nature. It's the same. That's what they're appealing to is that because he came out of the Father, he inherits everything that the Father has. As the stone comes out of the mountain, it's exactly the same substance as the mountain. That's the thinking here. Co-eternal. Well, the stone is just as old as the mountain is. Is that? Now, we may have, there's a lot of different things about how you understand eternity and time. Does even time exist in eternity? Obviously, sequence, things happen, and there's something that's before something else, but measurement of time is certainly something we don't understand. We live in a whole different dimension. So, from their house up there, we had to retrace our steps all back down to Deva, and then kept going. We got on the Autobahn of Romania, and went down about 140 kilometers an hour, all the way over to Sibiu, where we could get the airport, big airport, get on a jet plane, and fly to Germany, which we did, and to Munich. And in Munich, we could get on a real Autobahn. That's 190. You have a different picture. It was almost 195, which I looked up, and it's 118 miles an hour. I'd never gone that fast in a car before. And but everybody else was going that fast too. So, and in fact, there was someone who wanted to go faster, and we had to get over to let them go by. We had to divide us up. Adrian and Igor stayed here at Manfred's and Ingrid's place, and very neat. Every room is different, and the garden is part of the house even, I think, and they have all natural food. Boy, she is a good cook. I just really enjoyed our stay. And then Thomas, who met us at the airport, and this is his wife, Heidi. She teaches medical students. She's a nurse, but and she was going to take medicine. That's a whole other story there. But we stayed at their house, and that was neat. And so the next day, got up, and we got the two cars. Ingrid drove one car, and Manfred drove the other one. And we got on the Autobahn and drove all the way up through Nuremberg and over to Waldern, almost on the way to Frankfurt. So Waldern is our final place. And we knew we were getting close when we saw Beethovenstrasse. Yeah, Beethoven. Okay, this is where we stayed. It's a hostel, a youth hostel. That's what youth hostel. And we were way up in the peak of the roof. Not that peak, I think it was another peak, but stayed there. And this is the group. We had 2 rooms with a divider in the middle, so people were going down that side and down this side, and they're eating here. And there's Manfred. Oh, see, I got a better picture of him. There's some more over here in the group. There he is. See Manfred right there with the. He inspired me. I'm gonna try to catch up with him. And Ingrid over here on the other side of the table. And then at the end, we were able to have a baptism. Now this time, instead of a cold creek, it was in a heated indoor Olympic swimming pool. Oh, it was beautiful. Look at that. Oh, man. Yeah, it had infinity water going over the edges. You could just get... Very, very nice. And the singing, the acoustics in there was wonderful. Oh, I've got movies of all this, but it don't work well in the PowerPoint. We have to show them separately. And man, I talked very fast. I'm all the way through already. Our two translators, Yuta over there standing next to Adrian, and Susanna over here in the middle, and Igor on the end. Hans, Torsten, Jorg, and I forgot her name, but she was Georg's daughter, Georg's daughter, I think, yeah. And then our other lady, and I don't remember her name either, but yeah. Well, we had the group in Germany are the most organized, the largest. There's 60 people there, probably close to 60 for Sabbath when we had our baptism. And they are very active. They've got website, publishing, meetings. We're going to have a health expo conference in August. They twisted my arm to go back and do that. So we're going to help them out with that. But they are really, they're growing and a lot going on. We really want to see that work prosper. And so pray for these, all these areas. With three that we were at are doing a good work. And we want to see them grow and reach out. There's so many in Serbia, there at Zrenjanin, at the Sabbath that we were there, one of the people from the local church came, looking and reading all the books. Yeah. So we want to pray for these folks and encourage them.